Okay, welcome everybody to another Lunch and Learn for the UK Azure User Group. Thankfully this week we have a Q&A. Yay! If any of you turned up to the last one, that was missing. we did wonder why it was missing and never got to the bottom of it, but we don't have the same problem this week. So just to recap, one of the things that we thought would be a really good idea to do, because everybody's getting swamped and has been during the lockdown with a lot of virtual sessions, is to do something a little bit through the midpoint of the day, just to have a nice break in the day. And we might keep this format for another few months, where we'll just invite people to come speak about a particular topic for like 15-20 minutes, have some Q&A. Doesn't have to be new, like the topic I'm going to speak about today. Can be anything, but either reach out to myself or Andy, who's here as well, and or just put it in the Q&A section for us to let us know that you want to do something, and we will turn it into a lunch and learn, which we're going to have bi-weekly. Okay, so today I want to talk to you a little bit about Azure Synapse Link. Synapse has evolved a lot. It was Microsoft's flagship data warehouse in Azure, formerly called SQL DW. It is probably familiar to a lot of you, although I think feature-wise, if you haven't used it before and haven't used the studio before, it is definitely worth spending some time going through the Microsoft docs and investigating, because it has quite a lot of evolving features. Just to list them through here, you'll have Synapse pipelines, which is effectively, if you've used ADF before, Azure Data Factory, this should be really familiar with you. It allows you to register data sets. It allows you to have schemas for them. It allows you to have sources and sinks, and to be able to construct pipelines through sets of activities and then manage those pipelines. And it happens within the context of Synapse Studio. So to all intents and purposes, it looks like Azure Data Factory, but it is within Synapse Studio. And I think because Synapse Studio has a couple of new features, so it has on-demand SQL, so a serverless version of SQL that you can use, as well as dedicated SQL pools, where you can effectively buy like a sort of guaranteed behavior, full-time behavior on your service. You can float between these two models, and you can also float between Azure Spark pools, which is a way of using Apache Spark within Synapse. And one of the things that Microsoft have done is they've made it quite easy to take these building blocks. So if you're using Apache Spark pools, or if you're using Synapse Spark pools, or if you're using the Synapse Data Warehouse, there's lots of capabilities now to use them from within activities into ADF, and then not worry about the security between them, because it's a lot of the managed identity capabilities are already set up to be able to access that. It's not something we'll cover today. It's quite an evolved subject. I've been teaching analytics in a day workshops. If you can and you want to learn more about this, just sign up for one of those, and it will give you some good lab content to work with. But today, what I'm doing is I'm talking about Azure Synapse Link. It's something that we mention on the workshops. It's not really well understood. There's not a huge amount of documentation on it either. And one of the things that you'll find is that this is something which will evolve continuously with Microsoft's plans. So if we look at what Synapse Link is, Synapse Link has support for CosmosDB, such that if I want to have real-time interaction between Cosmos and Synapse, so that I start inserting things into my Cosmos documents, then I will be instantly aware of them within Synapse. So it's a way of tying these two together for both reads and writes very, very quickly, so that you don't need to do ETL processes. So it's quite powerful. It also has support for the Dataverse. It's something that I haven't actually experimented with it, but I plan to. And maybe there'll be another session that we can do on this. But the Dataverse is all of the things that are, from Power Apps to some of the like Dynamics 365, like all of this sort of M365 content. Synapse Link will make this accessible as well to Synapse. I've looked through the documentation. It's a little bit more convoluted to set up than CosmosDB, but it is there at the moment. So I think as this evolves, there'll be less manual steps, which will be great, and more people will be using this as well. But essentially, this is how change data capture, synchronization, mirroring, whatever you want to call this, from these data sources into Synapse. Now, Spark pools are supported, which means that you should be able to write notebooks, and we'll see this. And this will effectively allow us to access these underlying notebooks, and then just automatically process the data in Cosmos or the Dataverse, and also from SQLDB. So you'll be able to write SQL scripts and immediately see the updates from Synapse Link. But I'm going to focus on Cosmos today, and just a couple of slides, which shouldn't take more than a few minutes before we dive into a demo, which will take about 15-20 minutes maybe, and then we'll take 10 or 15 minutes of questions. So the idea behind this is that we want to create a native link between SQL and have that being Synapse here, but treat this as what's called an analytical store. Now, the difference between a transactional store and an analytical store is that at the row level, you have filters, predicates, transactional level per row, but in the analytical store, it's column-wise. So some of you may have had experience of this already when you've been working with big data in frameworks like Apache Spark, Azure Databricks, Azure HD Insight. So this is effectively what happens within Cosmos DB in this case. You have all of your operational data going into a transactional store. The container that you create, you have to flag as an analytical store, and there's a way to do that in code, which I'm going to show you. And when you flag that as an analytical store, what it will do is it will turn that into a columnar store within the same container, so that whenever you treat Cosmos transactionally, you'll get that sync up in the container, and that will allow you to do effectively big data queries very, very easily against Cosmos. So it's very different from the way that you would normally access Cosmos from something like from Apache Spark using the native connector, which is an OLTP connector. This is used in a way that allows this to be much more native, so that you're basically reading this in a way that you would read a Parquet file. Okay, and this is just a little bit more. Some of you can see and maybe understand how the data is pivoted here and how it's represented very, very differently. You know that you see You see everything in terms of the logical representation below in the transaction as all of the rows, each row from beginning to end, stored sequentially, and you have exactly the same representation in the analytical store for the column. So that's what our Synapse link is going to show us. So so there are a couple of things that are really, really important here. The first thing is that we need a CosmosDB. So what I've done is I have taken the like a whole load of platform services here. So we've got a storage account, we've got a Synapse workspace, we've got a CosmosDB account, and we've got an Apache Spark pool, which I've created in advance because it does take a while to create. And from the top down, what we're going to do here is just look through our data explorer. The way that we interact with Cosmos is fairly simple. You can see here that we've got a user group, which is our database. We've got members, which is our collection, and then we've got all of the items in that. Now, if I click on one of these, what happens is you get you've got a representation, very simple representation of members. So we've got names, we've got specialism, the events attended, where the city is, and then we've got all of this metadata attached to Cosmos. And then below that, we have, something similar. So each one has an ID. We've got name, specialism. Sorry, Andy, I'll put you down as web guy. And events attended and city. And you can see that I've partitioned by city. So essentially, this is saying, let's store everybody who's from London on a separate partition, and then we'll basically be able to search very quickly on that city. So I've created a notebook based on the default notebook here, and some of the things I've left the same, but you can see here that this is a simple client using C# script, and creates our user group, uses this container properties. Now this is key here. What we've done, there are two things that you need to do here. So I'll just move over to settings so we can see features, and this is one feature that we have to turn on. So we need to turn on, we need to enroll to Azure Synapse Link, and that kicks off our process. Then once we've done that, whenever we create a container, we have to have this time to live in seconds. So this sort of means that it can work immediately. So we create this, and as soon as we have any entry into the OLTP part, the row-based part of Cosmos, it will automatically insert it into the column store. So what else do you need to know about this? So then I've created a type called member, which reflects what we saw as well. So I'm gonna insert another row into this. You can see that we're just creating an example GUID. So let me, I'm trying to think. Andy, my mind's gone blank. Can you give me a Hobbit name I can use, please?
I mean, it's got to be Frodo or something like that, right?
Does Frodo have a surname? Is it Frodo Baggins?
Yeah, Frodo Baggins.
Right. Pick an area of the country.
Yorkshire.
Okay, I knew you were going to say that. I don't know why, but is Frodo a data engineer?
Yeah. I mean, I guess so.
Yeah. All right. So let's say that he's been to 12 user group events. All right, let's see this. Oh, and here we go. No, sorry, I didn't see this. My bad. Let's remove bogus. So this is what happens when you cut and paste. Oh, and this would help as well. And oh, and I also need a container, so I'm going to have to run this. Should exist. So there we go. Okay. All right. Let's try again. All right, I think that's done. Easy thing to do here is to check in our items collection. Oh, we've got 2 in Yorkshire. Wonderful. Got Frodo and Frodo. Brilliant. Not quite sure why that happened. I probably executed that twice. So now that we've done that, let us go to these 2 other things. So we have Spark, a Spark pool here, and one of the things that I'm going to do is start that. It's going to take a few minutes, so let's review the code while it does. Okay, you can see here it's not using the standard Cosmos format. It's using a format called cosmos.olap, online analytical processing. We've already created a linked service for this called UG Cosmos. And if I just go to here, whilst that's running, look at linked services, and you can see UG Cosmos here. I tried a couple of variants. I think when I tried this, I had lots of problems accessing this using a managed identity. I think that is a little bit flaky. I got some transient errors. Haven't yet reported them to Microsoft, but I didn't waste any time. I just used the key just for the demo. So if we go back to if we go back to here, let's just take a look at what the Spark pool's doing, and it's still waiting. So let me talk through the code while this takes place. So what this will do is it will read everything from Cosmos and display it here. Then if you haven't used Spark pools before, then what essentially this is doing is it is taking is creating this these members and creating a table from these members here. You can see that it's already got that. It's got an awareness of what members is because it already exists in the catalog, because I just remembered I forgot to delete it. And that essentially is stored in Cosmos. So that will give us the here we go, the internal members. So you can see that we've got our 4 members here. Got 2 Frodos, both from Yorkshire, maybe living next to each other. And we've got this, which I think is going to fail because I've already created this and didn't remove it. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so that already exists. So let's see what is in our table members. It's already got a definition of what it is. Okay, and that basically sits on top of that other of that Cosmos analytical store structure. So then lastly, one of the things which is pretty interesting with this is that you can create these change feeds so that in exactly the same way as we would normally get a stream of events. I had a few issues here with the console stream, but in exactly the same way as we would get these events, right? If I write this last progress, right? And for anybody that hasn't done this before, this is called structured streaming, and this will allow us to stream all of the changes from Cosmos. And what I've done is I've put a trigger in there so that this will take micro batches every 10 seconds from Cosmos. And you can see here that we've got a number of input rows 4. It hasn't flagged any new rows at all. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just add another one just so that we can see this working. Okay, so, oh, right, another Hobbit names. Let's do Bilbo. I think that let's treat him as a War of the Roses. We're going to make him a BI engineer, and unlucky for some. Perfect. Okay. Now, let's take a look to see whether or not this is going to pick that up. And remember, it runs every 10 seconds. There's a micro batch every 10 seconds. So we should find out whether it does. Okay. Oh. Two input rows. Let me check again because I think that there's obviously something that I'm doing wrong that duplicates this. Go on. It doesn't seem to want to do a refresh, I think. So I'm just going to refresh the whole page. Let's go back to our items collection. And there we go. All right, so it's my bad. I'm obviously inserting that twice. I'll review the code. I was going to send this out anyway. So okay, so it's actually picked up on that change feed on these two input rows, and it's given us a stat. What we could do with Spark streaming is to have an output stream that works. As I say, the console one isn't working in this. Apache Spark pulls is very new and it's still very flaky. So it doesn't have a lot of the features that Databricks has got yet, and it also has some nuances and issues. But it's evolving. So we'll just stop that, and my Spark pool should disappear shortly. Now, just lastly, before we go into questions, the other way that you can deal with this is, and I created a shared access SIG, which I'm going to remove. I should have removed before this, but generally you need a Cosmos credential, you need a Cosmos, you need a database. So you can see I've created a view, which can basically sit on top of that, and then just it just reaches out into that account, that user group, tell it that the object is members, the server credential is that, etc., etc. So so I should be able to do the same thing and touch wood. Oh, right. So I've obviously dropped that. Let me Let me go through all of these just in case, because I'm not sure where my state is. Okay, it was just the. So let's create that. Create our credential. Okay, and now we'll create our view. Perfect, and then we'll just, oh, oops. Okay, and now we're still running. Go on. Okay, and there we go, and we've got our 6 users, and as and when Cosmos updates, we should just be able to use that view within SQL now. And if you've ever used Open Row Set before, you'll know that formally you can use this with column stores, things like Parquet files as well, so that you can just use this, read this into, you know, a row-based capability within SQL database. So that was my whistle-stop tour of Synapse Link. I haven't shown all of the features. There are a few bits and pieces that you can do, but by and large, it's about that connectivity back to Synapse in real time, plus to things like Apache Spark pools and being able to use them in real time through structured streaming like we showed, and also directly through data frames through the cosmos.olab format provider. I'm probably going to publish these, well, not probably, I'll find out a way to publish this, maybe through the user group. I'll just put a share link up, just in case anybody wants to get kick-started on this, because the documentation isn't the best at the moment. So, you know, hopefully some of you will avoid some of the pitfalls that I went through. One thing to bear in mind about the Cosmos instance that you use, it has to be a dedicated Cosmos instance. So you cannot use this, and I've used the smallest one here, but you cannot use this with a serverless instance, because you do not get the feature link. It only works with a non-serverless SKU. Okay, so with that, I'm going to take a pause, and if you want to relay any questions, now's probably a good time.
All right, cool. So first question is there any way of viewing streaming jobs in Spark pools?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the normally what would happen is you would get a nice streaming UI within Databricks if you were using streaming jobs. I haven't been able to find one in Spark pools. You normally get an extra tab on the Spark UI, which you can use, which is quite rich, gives you real-time graphs. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find one in outside of Databricks. So you know, it is something. This is the first time where I've tried to use structured streaming, and I've been a little bit disappointed that the console output sync is not quite working. It's not working at all, and that I've had to resort to using Spark objects to be able to illustrate that data's landed. So I think it's something that I'm going to raise with Microsoft. It might be on the roadmap because, as I say, it is evolving quite quickly. But the short answer is not at the moment, unless you're going to build it yourself through the Spark APIs.
Okay. I guess that sort of bears the question, how much of those Spark APIs are available to you in that space? Have you got full access to all those, or is there some limitation around the edges of them?
You do. You definitely do. One of the things that I would say that I came across with this, which was mildly annoying, is that currently the supported version of Spark is 2.4, and for anybody that uses Spark knows that 3.1 and minor flavors revision flavors are already available. The annoying thing is that the Cosmos OLAP format works with 2.4 out of the box. It doesn't work with 3.0 out of the box, which is a preview cluster within Spark pools. So anybody that uses Synapse Link at the moment will have to default to not using Spark 3 basically, which is mildly annoying. There probably is a way to take that format provider and deploy it yourself onto a 3.0 cluster in Spark pools, but I didn't have time to do that here. But you do have the capability to add libraries, so you should be able to. But out of the box, at the moment the support for Synapse Link and Cosmos is a little bit tenuous on the Spark front.
Right. Okay. Well, so next question is around secret management, and does Synapse let you use secrets in the SQL scripts?
So that was another thing that annoyed me. I was actually hoping that I wouldn't need to use a secret and that I could just back off to the link service. But what actually happened was I had to use the generated shared access signature in secrets. What you could do is I didn't do this properly because it was a quick test. These lunch and learns are supposed to be quick, but you can create credentials in SQL and then not show them on the screen like I did. So that's probably the best way to just create credential in advance. But ideally, the ideal for me would be in SQL to just not even think about that credential, but to back off to a link service credential, the Cosmos link service credential, but I couldn't figure out a way to do that.
Okay, so it's a good one. I think this is a good one anyway. So obviously you showed some streaming, the streaming source that's inside Cosmos.
Yeah.
How does turning that on affect the price that you have to pay?
That is a really, really good question. I haven't done enough investigation to know yet, but the link, it does not copy data from Cosmos, right? What it does is it creates a separate analytical store within the container. So the more you hit Cosmos, the more RUs you're going to use, and the higher your cost is going to be. So it doesn't make your costs go down.
All right, good stuff. So no more questions for now. I think that's it. Any further thoughts? Maybe Richard, while you're wrapping up, if anyone else have any questions, they can post them, and I'll keep watching.
I think one thought that I had so I feel that when this evolves for Cosmos, it will be really good, because to treat Cosmos as an event source that you can begin to process using microbatch windows in Spark is probably, it's a great boon, because you want to be using platform, not to say that the SQL script that I wrote wasn't useful, but you want to be using Spark to process lots of different data sources at different rates, because that's what big data is for. So I think that the ability to to literally have that analytical store capability so that you don't have to mess around with JSON and don't have all these row-wise operations is a fantastic boon if you're building a big data platform. So I think this is going to, like a lot of the things, I've just focused and talked down about the problems, but I think that going forward, these are all easy things to fix, and I think that this will probably be a very, very integral part of Synapse. And I also think that things like the use of the Dataverse, which hopefully I can do another lunch and learn on at some point in the future, really fantastic as well, because being able to have an event source where you can just generate these events, pass them in so that you can process them on sliding windows and emit event hub messages and do all of the crazy things that you want to do with at scale big data platforms. I think this is really what Synapse is trying to bring together with Link. So I hope it's going to be an extensive framework and actually involve a lot of sources that are harder to get to, where you have to write more glue code to know what's going on and tied to structured streaming.
Cool. A couple more questions popped up. Output syncs. What output syncs are supported?
So in structured streaming, there are quite a few. The console one, which obviously I had problems with. We can write to the lake. We can write to SQL. We can write back to Synapse if we wanted to. There's an output sync to Cosmos as well. So it's relatively fully featured, and one of the things that it does as well, you can see this local read checkpoint folder. So if we check on here, here we go. On our storage account, I think there's a container. Sorry, a folder. Oh yeah, here we go. So this will ensure that it treats the stream itself as a checkpoint. Oh God, do you know what? I've got lost in the question. What could you remind me of it again, Andy?
Yeah. So it's really the list of output syncs that are available.
Yeah, got you. So typically you'll be able to use any output sync that Spark supports. Because I would say that Databricks has a few customizations to this, which is specific to Databricks, but anything that is in the raw Apache Spark open source project, anything that you can see in the spark.apache.org website in the syncs, and it could Kafka, Event Hub. You have like a number of stream syncs. You have a number of batch syncs. You should be able to use them all. But yeah, there are some extra and some like changes to syncs that Databricks have done in adaptation. But yeah, by and large, I think most things are covered that you would want to use as an output sync.
Okay, and how are deletes handled? I guess in the change feed, but I guess you must get a change feed entry for those things if you are deleting things.
That's a really good question. I didn't have time to test that. I did it was one of these thoughts that popped into my head, and then I thought, oh, I've got to try that, and then I forgot. Yeah. But I suspect that that is actually a very good question. Yeah, that is a good question. It's something that I'll try and I'll feedback on because I'm not 100% sure that you would get the delete within the stream itself. If you don't, it would be an oversight. But generally, I don't think the rows have been identified with the the type of CRUD operation that they've been operated on.
Right.
From what I could see. So, but I'll check that. That's a good question.
Okay, cool. And the last one is, I guess, more of a observation, saying that the pricing calculator can be helpful. Can also be out of date, though, right? So, have you looked at the pricing calculator around the stuff?
I haven't actually. You're right. The pricing calculator can be out of date. I think that at the moment there's no specific charge for Synapse Link, from what I can see. It's basically a set of libraries and ways of interacting with Cosmos and the Dataverse. But as somebody pointed out in one of the questions around cost, there will be cost implications if it's treated as a data source. So yeah, I guess from the perspective of the pricing calculator, you just treat this as a number of hits or RUs used in Cosmos, which should go up fairly significantly if you were using this quite a lot.
Okay, I think that's it for questions.
Brilliant, and we are bang on time.
Yeah,
well,
good stuff.
Yeah, thanks to our audience for listening in and bearing with me. And we're going to put on another one of these in 2 weeks' time, and we'll announce the speaker. It is the holiday season, so everything's pretty slow, but we're going to try and be fairly religious about having these bi-weekly events now. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Rich.